Hello.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Brady. Do you want to try to reconnect?
Can you hear me? 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 Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can hear. I can even see. I can see you singing a little song.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
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 Hello. Hello. Hello.
Oh, goodness. I would like to open the podcast by lodging a formal complaint against Starbucks in the United Kingdom.
Wow, formal complaint.
One of the things that I like about America is just this feeling of everything is convenient. From big ways, we have a gigantic Walmart that contains everything that you could ever possibly want, plus other stores that you may need to use while you're in Walmart, like a bank or a haircutter's. From the biggest thing, America is very convenient, to the smallest little details, America is very convenient.
Yeah.
And one of those little details is when you order a coffee in Starbucks in the US, they have for you to use these little sticks that you can put in your coffee lid to block the place where the coffee pours out of. I don't know the name for these things. Do you know? You were laughing there. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I don't know. Fat person assistant sticks.
No, they're not fat person assistant sticks. You know, there's the hole where the coffee pours out of.
Yeah.
It's a little blocker, like a tiny cork that you can put.
Yeah, I know what I mean. It's just the many, many tools the fat people of America have to help them continue in their becoming fat.
How is this related to becoming fat? This is just convenient. And so when you get a coffee, you can put the little stick in it, and it prevents coffee from spilling out on your hand when you walk to the car or when you walk somewhere else while you want to hold a cup of coffee. Totally reasonable.
Yeah. So basically, it's assisting people that even when you're walking and moving, you can still have something incredibly calorific in your hand.
Or just coffee. Regular coffee is not super calorific.
Nah, fair enough.
You do with the Frappuccinos, what they do there is they give you the extra wide straws so that you can suck it up faster, right? That is much more fat person assistance technology that exists in America.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And is necessary when, I don't know, in theory, one might buy several Java chip Frappuccinos and you want to make sure that you can get all of the big chunks at the bottom nice and easily and they don't get stuck in the straw. That's fat person assistance technology.
Although if you have too wide a straw diameter, when you do get towards the end, it does get harder to pull stuff up.
Yeah.
You almost need a second thin straw to sort of hoover up that last bit.
That's when you just pour it in your face.
Okay.
Right. Getting back on track here, I'm talking about the
Okay.
drink corks. That's what I'm going to call it. It's a drink cork. It also doubles as a little stir for your coffee.
Why don't we call them hot stoppers? That's a better name.
A hot stopper?
Hot stopper.
All right, I'll give you that. Hot stopper.
Yeah.
I'll let that pass.
Okay.
So the hot stoppers. You can also use them to stir your drink. Very convenient.
All right.
But it drives me crazy that here in the UK, the exact same company, Starbucks, doesn't have these things. If you get a coffee in the UK, they don't have any hot stoppers for you to use.
Yeah.
They're just unavailable. And the thing that really bugs me about this is that Starbucks, unlike McDonald's, is not a chain. Starbucks actually owns all of the locations. Like they are a single unified corporate entity that is in charge of all of these Starbucks locations. They don't chain it out. There's no franchises. There shouldn't be any local variation. Why are there no hot stoppers here? Why do I have to suffer little tiny bits of boiling hot coffee coming out of the lid of the Starbucks coffee here and onto my hand when I want to walk from the Starbucks to my office? This has happened multiple times, and it makes me curse Starbucks in the UK. And somehow it also just feels very typical of all of England. I love England very much, but it does feel like English people sometimes enjoy the minor inconveniences of life, that they would feel that life was diminished if they didn't have trivial things to constantly complain about.
Yeah.
And I feel like, is this the reason that Starbucks doesn't have the hot stoppers? Because English people would actually complain that, like, oh, the hot stoppers. Well, what am I going to do if I don't get to complain about drops of coffee on my white shirt or on my hand?
I bet there's a reason. I don't think it's your reason. Like I appreciate the humor of your observation about the grumbling of the British people, and I do concur with your observation. But seriously, there probably is a reason. There's probably some EU mandate, or it's something to do with choking hazards, or it's something to do with litter and recycling. I bet there's a reason. I bet there's a stupid law.
I wanted to know the reason so badly that I actually spoke to some of the people at one of my local Starbucks just recently.
Wow, you must really want to know if you spoke to someone at a Starbucks.
Yeah. I went in and I said to the guy, I said, hey, you don't happen to have any of these little sticks that you put in the lid to stop coffee from spilling over in the back, do you? Like, are they there? Are they in a box and you just don't know to put them out front or something? Like, I actually was willing to overcome my great social resistance and speak to a person and try and find out the answer to this. And the worst thing was, the guy said to me, no, there aren't any. He completely agreed with me. And he said he went to some Starbucks manager training in America and saw these things and thought that they were absolutely amazing. And he has been trying to get them in his own local Starbucks. No luck thus far. So I don't know the reason, but there's got to be something. There's got to be something.
Have you now forged like a sort of special connection with that guy that means you can no longer go to that Starbucks again?
I will not be going to that Starbucks for quite a while until hopefully he forgets. He forgets about the guy who wanted to know about the hot stoppers. Yeah, but that's the price one pays for trying to find out the answer to a question.
Okay, well, there you go. I'm really impressed by how quickly you've adopted hot stoppers.
We need something. I can't keep saying the stick that you mix the coffee with that also prevents coffee from spilling on your hand. That's a terrible name for a product.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. So, shall we start real follow-up?
We shall start real follow-up.
I think the feedback and the number of comments we had about tipping was high.
Yes.
Is that a fair observation?
Yes, it was very high.
Yes.
Do you have anything that you want to mention about the feedback on tipping?
Do you know what? I would say no. It became so overwhelming that it ceased being something that I felt like I could feed back on. It was just, I kind of just got swamped by the avalanche of comments and advice and experts and anecdotes and rules, and to the point where I'm just like, whatever.
This perfectly lays into what was my main point about the feedback on tipping. The overwhelming sentiment was, hey, you guys, you're just way overthinking it. Tipping is really simple. And then the person outlays how they tip under what circumstances. Which then
with really prescriptive rules and exceptions, and
right, with this group of employees, yes, those group of employees, no, this group it's 12.33%, right? That group it's 19.25%, but only if it's Wednesday, right? And then the commenter was always acting as though like we are the idiots who just don't understand these rules. But the best part about being on the receiving end of this kind of follow-up is that you see everybody's drastically different opinions, but everybody thinks it's very obvious, right? Everybody's coming at it from this, oh, well, you just do this. Everybody knows that. Why do you find this confusing? Even though you're hearing from 100 people a day who have different opinions about what the correct procedure for tipping is. And I was trying to think like a comparison to this. The only thing I could think to compare it to is sometimes like the rules of grammar. People will argue over like a way to make a sentence grammatical or what a sentence or like how a sentence should be structured. And everybody just thinks that the grammar rules that they learned from Mrs. Terwilloughby in the 4th grade, everybody knows those are the universal grammar rules that we use in English. Yeah. But like English is this horribly messy language and you don't have necessarily super consistent grammar rules everywhere. So it's reasonable to be confused about what is the true state of this, because there is no true state of it.
There is no better example of that for me. And I don't want to start a whole talk about this now, but there's no better example of what you just said to me than the Oxford comma.
Oh, yeah. There's a holy war waiting to happen.
I know. I'm on the opposite side to you on that one. And I have absolutely no justification for it other than it's just what I was taught to do. And the other way seems wrong to me. And I can hear the argument for the other side and it makes absolute perfect sense to me. And I say, yeah, you're right. Everything you say is logical. Yeah, that comma should go there. And yet I just refuse to do it because it's just not, I think it's wrong. And I have no explanation other than that's my rule.
I was taught no Oxford comma in school as a kid. That was really nailed into us. As an adult, I have broken free the shackles placed upon me by my education, and I will use the Oxford comma.
Yeah.
But you're never completely free of the shackles in your mind, because
Yeah.
even when I write out the Oxford comma, I have to do it somewhat intentionally, and it will still look weird to me.
Yeah.
But I think it's the way of the future. We have to go with this Oxford comma. But I can completely understand your side of this, of just like, it just feels wrong, even though it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's like someone who has a really religious upbringing and then decides to become an atheist. I still think even that person, if they're an atheist for the rest of their life, every time they declare their atheism, they probably think, sorry about that, God, it's just the way I think. All right, I'm sorry. Don't hold it against me. I just don't believe in you.
I am sure you will receive no feedback on that remark, Brady, none whatsoever.
I think the Oxford comma will get people more inflamed than the whole atheism thing. So
yeah, without a doubt, Oxford comma will be more of a religious war than actual religion. Two other minor points that I just want to have on our tipping discussion for follow-up. One of which was many people were telling me what I already knew, which is that in the United States, the way the law is supposed to work with waiters and waitresses is that if they don't earn enough from tips during their shift to have earned minimum wage, their employer is supposed to cover the difference.
Yeah.
I was very aware of this, but I have also spoken to people who actually work in that industry who unsurprisingly report that just basically doesn't happen. That if you're stiffed on tips or you're working a bad shift and your salary doesn't equal what minimum wage is supposed to be, you're not going to get that money out of the employer. It is never going to happen. And what are you going to do? Like, this is one of these situations. You're going to start trying to sue your employer for the money back. Like, you're going to spend many years on a class action lawsuit. Like, it's just not going to happen, which is precisely why restaurant owners feel that they can stiff waiters and waitresses out of what should be minimum wage. So that's why, again, I reiterate, I know people think in theory it's okay not to tip in America, but I would say it is not okay not to tip in a restaurant in America. You just have to do that.
All right.
And the final point that I want to say that just goes to my feelings about how tipping is uncomfortable for everybody is a number of people were telling me about how some Uber drivers do want to expect tips, and that Uber drivers, some of them will rate you as a bad passenger in the system if you don't tip them, as a way to try to let other Uber drivers know not to pick you up. One of the things that I think is great about the whole Uber system is that you have a rating that the driver can see before they choose to pick you up.
Yeah.
So that some Uber drivers are trying to drive down the averages for people who don't tip so that they can pick up tipping customers more on average. And they're like, oh, great, thanks. Yeah, this goes exactly to what I think about tipping. Like, it's complicated, it's socially awkward, and fundamentally it feels kind of like blackmail, kind of like bribery. It's just, I don't like it.
Apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but I was told it, so I'm believing it, and I'm now repeating it, so it is true.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're shopping and haggling in places like Thailand, where it's almost expected that you'll do a bit of haggling. If you just walk up to a stall and say, how much for that t-shirt? That's the beginning of the negotiation.
Right.
And some people obviously drive harder bargains than others. But apparently, if you're a really hard bargainer and you're a bit of an ass, what they do is when they finally agree to the sale and they put your object that you've bought in a bag, they have different coloured shopping bags that will tell the other store owners, don't deal with this person, he's an ass, and you'll spend half an hour until he gets you down to 8 baht. Whereas though, if you're not much of a bargainer and you're a bit of a pushover, they give you a different colour bag. So when you go into a negotiation, the store owner knows what to expect because of the bags you're holding from the store you were in before.
Right. He's looking at all those green bags thinking, this person is money for me.
That's right.
I am just going to assume that is true because it is delightful to think that it is true.
Fact. You heard it on Hello Internet. Now, we've been talking over a few episodes about puns and dad humour. I don't think we need to go over it too much more, but I did receive an email that I enjoyed and I wanted to share with you. So here's the paper, Gray.
Oh, wow.
You know I like my emails on bits of paper.
I do.
This comes from Isaac. I believe you and Mr. Gray are wrong about puns, because obviously you and I have been a little bit negative about puns, even though I am a big user of puns. Mm-hmm. Good puns are a great form of humour. I've lived for a couple of years in, here we go. How do you say this? Gothenburg? Gothenburg? Would you say in Sweden? I say Gothenburg, but let's go with Gothenburg for now. Apologies to the people of that fine city. I've lived for a couple of years in Gothenburg, a city known for having a strong pun culture. Here, people of all ages and social statuses tell puns, and they can be very inventive and well-timed. So I was obviously intrigued by this, him telling me that this city is well known for its pun culture. And I was obviously going to make a little joke about it and, say how it's funny how people think their city's famous for something. But when I did a little bit of research, it turns out Gothenburg is famous for its pun culture.
Oh, yes?
Yeah, apparently. I found this other article, which was based on a survey, a nationwide survey done in Sweden by Comedy Central, that decided the people of Gothenburg were the funniest in Sweden. Because apparently their accents are quite funny. But also, it says in the article, Gothenburg's favourite joke, puns, are the funniest type of joke, according to the Swedes, followed by irony and slapstick. So Swedes do find puns funny, and the people of Gothenburg with their funny accent are famous for their puns.
It must be a side effect of the language. Like I heard from a few people that puns are really big in China, but that it's a side effect of the way the Chinese language is structured.
Right.
I'm thinking the Swedes, it's something with their language or their overlap of all their languages that makes them really enjoy puns.
Yeah, that's quite possible. English isn't a terrible language for punning, though, is it?
But you could imagine a language that was better suited to puns. Yeah, I'm glad I don't speak that language, whatever it would be, because they're not funny.
So what's a language that's well suited to puns? One where there's more confusion and overlap, or one where the overlap and confusion is rarer and therefore the pun is more of a diamond in the rough?
The impression that I got from some feedback was that because Chinese has this tonality part of indicating meaning, that it's not just the sound, it's also the rising or falling tones, that this lends itself to lots of puns where you can make things that sound very similar. I'm going to guess that a language that has a great deal of overlap is what lends itself to punning, as opposed to a language that is barren in overlap, where puns are rare.
I mean, that would make sense, doesn't it? That tallies with the whole Chinese number thing, isn't it? Where the numbers they like and don't like are because, this number sounds like the word for death and this number sounds like the word for money and things like that. So,
I'm unfamiliar with that. Oh, okay. That sounds interesting.
I mean, Chinese people are obsessed with the number 8, aren't they?
I do not know this. Are they?
I think it's 8. And if they sell like a license plate or a house that's number 8 on a street is worth more than all the other ones.
Oh, humans.
I know.
That's great. Curb Appeal is trying to change the number of the house. Maybe like we talk about how in big cities everything is one London Bridge. Maybe in the Chinese cities, they all like to be 8.
8 and 6 are sought after, and 4 is a bad number. I can't remember why. I think it must be something to do with death. Chinese lucky numbers. I'll send you a link later if you want to find out more.
Oh, I learned something new today.
The things you learn on Hello Internet.
You learn about the Chinese love of numbers and how you're going to get different colored bags in markets around the world.
That's right. Now, one thing you have been learning from time to time until recently was the location of 2 ships. 2 cruise ships that I was constantly looking up on the internet and telling everyone where they are. And I without your permission, I made these the official flagships of Hello Internet.
Yes, you did.
I'm not going to lie. Gray wasn't keen on the idea of me looking up the positions of these ships in every podcast, but because he's a good friend and a very tolerant person, he was letting me do it. So I'm happy to report, much to his delight, although he doesn't agree with my reasoning, I have decommissioned these 2 ships.
Oh, really?
I'm not even speaking their names. That is the extent of the decommissioning.
That's really sad, Brady. That's really sad.
Yeah, and as Gray well knows, and I'm not going to go into it in detail here because he's already laughed at me way too much and I'm not going to give him another opportunity to do so.
Oh, what, do you mean the 20 minutes we cut from the last podcast? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, basically, I contacted like the cruise line in charge, Royal Caribbean or Royal Caribbean, which is another discussion that was cut because we probably spent way too long on it.
Uh-huh.
Because I just wanted to go, when the ship was next in England, I wanted to go and have a look at it and maybe, do a podcast there or something. I didn't know what I wanted, but I was not shown sufficient love by the public relations.
Do you want me to summarize the conversation that we had?
No,
last
I
time?
do not. I most certainly do not want you to summarize it. The upshot was I was shown insufficient respect by the public relations people, in my opinion. And Gray has already pointed out to me that an $8 billion company like Royal Caribbean can probably live without the love of Hello Internet. And also, I don't imagine many of the Blue Rinse set who like going on cruises are Hello Internet listeners either. Although, I will point out two things in the wake of that. Oh, do you like what I did there? In the wake of that? I will point out two things in the wake of that. One is, I have actually, in the last couple of weeks, received an email from a passenger on one of these ships saying, I was just listening to your podcast and I was on the ship. Mm-hmm. So we do have listeners on the ship. And also, we love talking about like robots and things being taken over by machines and things, don't we? Especially Gray. And it turns out one of these ships has like robot bartenders, and we could have spoken for hours about that. But you know what? We're not going to. Now, Gray, don't you start on me, right?
I'm just gonna say.
I'm just gonna say
for
you've
the
got rid
listeners.
of a whole corner you didn't want. You've got rid of a whole corner you didn't want. You should just be happy and move on.
I am very happy. But I just want to tell the listeners that if you ever receive a phone call from Brady, be sure to show him the respect that you think a man in his position in life deserves. Because if you don't roll out that red carpet for Mr. Numberphile, he will. It is like hell hath no fury, like a Brady scorned. That's all I'm gonna say. If you work for PR and Brady calls, if it's not the way that he thinks it's gonna go, you will be dead to him forever. So even though Brady in some ways is trying to play this as, CGP Grey didn't like this corner where we discuss an arbitrary location in the ocean every week, it is actually much more Brady is scuttling these ships to the bottom of the ocean.
I have been entirely honest about my motivations. Your dislike for my checking on the ship's corner has absolutely nothing to do with the end of it. It is entirely my displeasure with this public relations person.
I just want to make it crystal clear for people.
Yeah. But let me clarify that message that Gray just sent out to the public relations people of the world.
Right.
Don't think that way about Brady calling you. Take that way about people from new media calling you. Because although you may not be entirely aware of this, old newspapers printed with ink onto dead trees is not the only place that you can garner publicity in the world. And if a gift horse comes along offering you all sorts of lovely things, don't shun it just because it doesn't print its message onto dead trees. Can we move on now?
we can move on. I will let you have the final word. Hello, Internet. Let me tell you a story of sadness followed by great happiness. So this summer I was visiting my parents, and as parents are, they are sad when it is time for their child to leave. The actual morning of departure is a difficult one for parents. I was getting ready for the flight, packing the final bags, moving them into the car, but I had prepared for this moment. You see, all summer long, my parents kept mentioning how there was this one photograph of Brady that really made them laugh every time they saw it. It's Brady trying to read Getting Things Done, a frown on his face, Audrey on his chest, also looking at the book, also frowning. It's an amazing photograph. So as I was doing the final preparations to get ready to go, the doorbell rings, the delivery man is there, and what arrives but a fracture of the photograph of Brady. And let me tell you, it turned the whole morning around. There's magic in photographs, and Fracture wants to take that magic out of our digital lives and into our physical lives. And digital man that I am, the physical is different. Now, I had never seen a fracture before. This was actually the first time I had ever ordered one. And I was really impressed with seeing it in person. Now, many times you have heard how great fractures look. This is all very true. It looks beautiful. But I want to focus on the thing that was most surprising to me, which is that the fractures are very light. I kept hearing on all of the ads how it's printed on glass. And in my mind, I imagined that this was going to be very heavy, that this was going to be a real solid thing that would be difficult to mount on the wall or display somewhere in the house. But no, it's surprisingly light. So installing something like this in your house, it's not a big deal. If you've been hearing photographs printed on glass and like me kept thinking, must be really heavy, don't want to deal with it, that is not the case. A physical picture as a gift can change a whole day. So if you're listening to this and you've never ordered a fracture before, I want you to take this opportunity and think about someone in your life whose day would be made brighter with a surprise gift. Think of a moment that's important to them and get it printed and get it sent to them. And when you do that order, you can use the offer code HelloInternet, all one word, to get 15% off your order. So right now, open up fractureme.com and brighten up someone's day. I see that we have some follow-up for the Emojipedia Wolf.
Oh, yes. I'm very excited about this one. Remember Wolfgate?
Right. This was the Audrey emoji is what we were confused about.
Yes, because my wife and I, who both use iPhones, use the wolf face emoji as a representation for Audrey and Lulu because they're both kind of beige-coloured dogs and they look a little bit like the wolf face on the iPhone. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that the wolf only looks like that on the iPhone. And if you use Android or Windows, I'm looking at a list here, or Samsung and Twitter and Facebook, they all have different emojis. And all of theirs not only look quite different, they're grey coloured. It's only Apple that has this kind of fawn colour that's like my dog's.
Right. That looks nothing like a wolf. Apple is clearly wrong with their drawing. And I hate all of Apple's emojis. They're terrible.
Indeed. If this is supposed to be a wolf, I mean, I didn't know it was a wolf. We just called it, we called it Audrey and Lulu, or it looks probably more like a fox.
So many of their emojis are terrible, or they're terrifying if you zoom in on them. Like a lot of the faces in the family ones, like don't look at it too close because they're terrifying. I am not a fan of their
wolf one's actually the opposite. Their wolf one's actually much nicer than the other ones. Although if it's supposed to be a wolf, then they're probably missing.
That's right. Because it's much nicer because it's a puppy, is what they've drawn. I don't know who's in charge of emojis over there at Apple, but
I don't know.
Let me show you a picture of a wolf.
We've already discussed this at considerable length, much more than you could think two guys could discuss one emoji. But anyway, we did discuss at one point how our debate on this issue caused a spike in the number of people viewing the wolf page on Emojipedia, which is a website that I didn't know existed until we drove all this traffic to it. I don't know if this is like some big operation like Wikipedia or it's some Mickey Mouse operation that just one person's doing in their basement. Either way, it's like an encyclopedia of emojis, and it looks pretty well done to me, to be honest. And one of the things they're doing, obviously to sustain their site or to make money or whatever, is they're allowing people to sponsor pages on their website instead of having ads. You know, obviously they're trying to make their money with ads, and they're thinking maybe a better way to do it would be to get people to give them money. You know how these things go. Anyway, I was contacted by Jeremy from Emojipedia, and he has kindly made Lulu and Audrey the official sponsors of the wolf page.
Oh, really?
On Emojipedia. So if you go to the wolf page on Emojipedia, instead of being served some grotesque ad that you don't even want to see, you will see that Audrey and Lulu are the sponsors. And there's even a link off to Audrey's Facebook page.
Oh, there we go. Sponsor.
Yeah.
This wolf face emoji has been adopted by Audrey and Lulu. Look at that. I still love the fact that Audrey has a Facebook page.
Yeah.
This is what you do, Brady.
It's so cute. There should be more people following that. It's so much cuteness.
You have 1,000 people following your Chihuahua. You want more?
Yeah. Audrey deserves more.
How many does Audrey deserve?
Oh, I would say 10 to 20K.
10 to 20K? That's what you think Audrey, the adorable Chihuahua, deserves?
Yeah, I think that would be nice. I base that on nothing.
Yeah. But no, this is good. So good. Audrey is sponsoring emojis. I like this.
We will have, by the way, I've been meaning to talk to you, not today because we've got way too much to talk about, but we will have a discussion at some point about whether or not I'm going to be able to persuade you to get a dog, because we've been avoiding this issue for too long on the podcast.
Have we been avoiding this issue? I feel like we haven't been avoiding this issue because you constantly badger me about it in just our normal lives. I feel like, isn't this what we always talk about?
Yeah, in our normal lives, we talk about it a lot, but we don't talk about it on the podcast much. And
okay.
I need a bit more time. I want to put together my argument, so we'll do it later.
You want to get together all your paperwork for that one and make a nice case?
Well, actually, what I really want to do is just buy one and give it to you for Christmas in the presence of your wife, and then watch what you do.
Oh, yeah.
I got you a
I'll
puppy.
show you what I do. You go ahead and try that.
All right. Another piece of follow-up here. This is a link that, I don't know where this link came from. I'm sure it was sent to us by someone. So thank you, person.
Good job of credit there, Brady.
Yeah. Attribution. Some people seem to think it's this right they have to just be attributed if they send us something or suggest we talk about something. And I remember one time on the podcast I just mentioned, someone sent me a link. And someone said, Brady, you're freebooting. You're freebooting by not attributing. I'm not sure that is freebooting, but anyway. I'm not entering the debate, but I'm just putting it out there.
I'll just say, the only reason I called you out on it is because if listeners go back and listen to us talk about stuff, I never even make any attempt to try to attribute things because I feel like who knows where it comes from. It just comes from the internet.
Yeah.
But I loved your attempt and then immediately just giving up on trying to attribute it. Whereas I feel like the only winning move here is to not try. It's just so hard to keep track of this stuff. So that's why I drew attention to it.
I think it's nice to do it when you can, but unfortunately it does create a precedent and then everyone expects it.
It creates a precedent, and then you also end up with a podcast where a good 10% of the podcast is discussions on how a person's name might be pronounced, and then also apologies for not pronouncing it correctly. You did that to a whole city just moments ago.
I'm sorry, I did, yeah. At least I didn't go each person in the city one by one, but let's say this link came from Tim.
Okay, what did Tim send us?
A report or of some sort. You can click on it. It's there in the show notes.
Oh, right.
This comes from the safety, CASA, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority in Australia. So that's, it's the plane people in Australia. And it's this big report that was done. And I haven't.
Oh, this looks boring.
Yeah, I think it looks quite interesting, but I haven't read it. But basically, it's about whether or not they've done a research into whether or not people are paying attention to flight safety videos. Ugh. And they've actually used some of the more gimmicky ones as their example.
Yeah, well, obviously the reason this looks terrible is it opens with the standard opening line for articles that just is never a good indication, which is the what do X things have in common? So this report opens with what do the following have in common? Bilbo Baggins, Lady Gaga, and the Manchester United football team. I was like, oh no, this is always a terrible opener, but all three have been featured in pre-flight safety demonstration videos.
The reason I brought it up was in the last podcast when I said I thought it was quite conceivable that research is done into whether or not people pay attention to safety videos. I thought you were a bit dismissive and didn't think that was particularly likely. And I said, well, I think it is. I thought it is likely. So I'm just bringing this up to point out not only is it likely, we now know that it does happen. People do research people's attention into airline safety videos. And that was the first plank of my argument about whether or not there are legal reasons for mixing it up with your airline safety videos. And I just wanted to put that in there,
Yeah, I'm just skimming through this, though, and I am unconvinced by their bullet points here. Because the big headline here is, the problem is people don't pay enough attention. Right? And so they're giving examples of when people don't pay attention. So as an example, they list an airplane that had the oxygen masks deploy. And as we all know, Brady, oxygen may be flowing to the mask, even though the bag does not inflate.
Yes, I have heard that.
But they here say that 2 crew members had to get up and assist 2 passengers who were concerned about the bag not inflating on this particular flight. And all I can say is 2 people out of an airplane, that's amazing. Like my experiences as a teacher is you can't give instructions to a room full of 20 people and be guaranteed that all 20 of them are going to follow those instructions.
That's actually really impressive, yeah.
Yeah, even if you have everybody paying attention 100%, there was, I don't know if I should bring this up now, but there was a kind of kid who, I don't know how to describe this, but I would just say there were some kids who weren't like dumb, but you would give instructions to a group and they would sit there and then the group would get started doing whatever you told everyone to do. And they would wait for you to personally explain the thing to them. And they seemed to just not believe the group instructions could possibly apply to them. Yeah. And so that's why, like, I just skimming these things over here, there's another example here about, 6 people on an airplane didn't follow the appropriate instructions, 8 people on an airplane. And it's just like, these numbers seem tiny to me. Like, so I'm not convinced that the opening statement, the problem people do not pay enough attention, is actually a problem. Like, I think you're starting from the assumption that if you could get everyone to pay full attention to your video, that they would follow instructions perfectly. I think that is a false assumption. And I'm also not convinced that making the video more engaging is also going to be guaranteed related to an improvement in knowledge about what to do. Like, you can have people watch a thing and learn and retain nothing from it. Like, for example, you can watch one of my videos where I talk very quickly and moments later maybe remember absolutely nothing, even though you were paying attention. So I disagree with the premise of at least my 2 seconds of skimming this report.
My skim of this report, I was equally unimpressed by it, but that's by the by. The whole point I wanted to make was this is an area of research. And I thought it was inevitable there would be research because airline safety gets researched to death. And I found it impossible to believe this area wasn't another area that gets researched. And so it is. Whether it's being well researched or researched by idiots or it's just well-funded kind of jobs worths, I don't know. And I haven't read this well enough to say for sure, but I wasn't massively impressed at first glance as well. But anyway, I just wanted to throw it out there, and I love any excuse to talk about airlines and planes. I'm sure we'll do it again, even in this podcast.
Yes, I know it's coming. I could feel it looming over the horizon. But while we can still talk about airplanes, I was quite delighted to discover the answer to how do pilots relieve themselves when they are flying fighter jets across the Atlantic Ocean for 10 hours.
This was a great Reddit comment too, by the way, from, let's try and say this name, XIXOXIXA.
Zizoxia.
Zizoxia, oh yeah. Wow. I spent a good minute trying to think how to say that, and you speak Reddit so much better than me. So what did Zizoxia have to say? Zizoxia?
So Zizoxia.
It's not ear, though, because it just ends with an A. It's Zizoxia.
Just let it go, Brady. Let it go. It's Zizoxia. That's how you say it. Just the whole trick is just say it confidently and don't apologize. Right? That's how you do it.
Oh. So that's not some word you already knew. Like, that's not like the name of some demon from Lord of the Rings that I should know, and you're laughing that I don't even know. I've never heard of it or something.
No, that's the first time I've seen that word, and you just run with it and don't look back.
Okay, like Gothenburg.
Yeah, exactly. So Zizoxia linked us to the urine collection devices that are commonly referred to as piddle packs that the people in jets will use. And the thing that is most interesting to me is that they are little, almost like the airline sickness bags, but they are shaped in a little bit of an arc so that they can be attached to mail equipment rather easily that you can urinate into. And they contain a powder that turns into gelatin when it is contacted with liquid. So you are not doing the thing that, say, a long-haul trucker does, which is taking your empty bottle of Mountain Dew, right, and then just hoping to seal it up, right? That these piddle packs will turn your urine into something solid and presumably more easy to deal with in the confines of a fighter jet. And the answer about what do they do for number 2 is they wait, which I would find rather stressful for 10 hours.
Well, sometimes it has to be done. I also found it really interesting that these are also often used by military snipers when they're in their hides, for long periods of time. So What's cooler than pilots and snipers? I don't know. Not many things.
Snipers are so cool.
Yeah. I mean, the whole killing thing, the killing people thing's, I guess, not great, but it's still pretty cool.
You know how when you talk about Plane Crash Corner, you tell me to put aside like the horrors of it and just discuss the thing?
Yeah.
That goes with fighter jets and snipers. It's like, aside from the murder, let's talk about how cool this is. Snipers, super cool. I often thought if I was ever going to be in the military, sniper training just seems like that would be amazing. I would love to be a sniper if I had to do that. That'd be great.
My first instinct is that you would not be a good sniper.
I might be terrible at it, but I would be willing to give that a go. Like if you have to be on the ground, I mean, really, if I was in the military, if I was drafted or something, my number one strategy would be to convince them about like, hey, I can program computers. Like, let me sell how I can be useful to you, military, in a way that is not being on the front lines.
Oh, yeah.
But if I had to be in the front lines, sniper is what I would try for. I would try to do that. What about you, Brady?
Well, fighter pilot, of course.
No, but no. Oh, yeah. I mean, fighter. Yeah, and then I drive, a tank or something. But no, if you had to be. Yeah. You don't get a.
You just cherry picked sniper, and now you're saying I can't cherry pick a cool job.
What I mean is, if you had to pick a job where you don't get to surround yourself with a protective machine, would you be the guy holding the telephone in the military?
I wouldn't classify fighter pilot as the safest job in the military.
We're not talking about if it's safe or not. I'm just saying you're a dude on the ground. Would you hold the rocket launcher? Would you be the medic?
I'm going to follow in my dad's footsteps and be a dog tracker.
Oh, dog tracker. Hey, have you finished those videos yet? We talked about those like a year and a half ago.
Did I tell the viewers that I've done a second one in the series? There is another video with my dad that you can go and watch.
You never mentioned there's a second one.
There is another one. I'll put a link in the show notes.
All right.
There is a new video with my dad. This one is about him climbing up a hill and sort of showing you the geography of the base where he was when he was in Vietnam.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it's okay. It's not quite the gripping story of action and combat of the first one, but it tells you a lot about how it worked and how they'd helicopter in and out and things like that. It's pretty good. It's all right. I'll link to it. You can have a look if you like.
In the show notes.
Yeah. Look at that. You gave me a nice little plug there, Gray, without even meaning to.
Of course I meant to.
And check out the book. Available on Amazon.
Now you're
Trackers.
Now you're reading.
The book's the good part. Don't watch my video. The book's what you should be reading. Forget the videos.
I see we have Shredder follow-up. This is also very exciting to me.
So Muddy001 just asked for Shredder follow-up. And just because someone asks for something doesn't mean they're going to get it on the podcast. But in this case, they are, because I did have some Shredder follow-up.
Oh, yeah?
And that is the news that I have not been shredding for quite some time now because I have suffered a major jam that I cannot fix.
Oh, you mean the paper jam in your shredder? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I put through too many bits of paper at once, and it seems to have caught. And I've tried like going forward and reverse. And
this is the thing with shredders: is they tempt you to push them to the edge. So you always think, "Ooh, this seems good. I can fit 8 simultaneous pieces of paper. Oh, maybe 10 simultaneous pieces." And then sooner or later, there's some trouble. My trick that I have found is use a letter opener. That's the best tool for de-stickifying a shredder. Have you tried a letter opener?
This sounds like this should be on your other podcast if we're talking about things like letter openers and documents and things. I have not tried a letter opener. I've got a Swiss Army knife. I'll stick my blade in and see what happens.
The other great solution is to just buy a bigger shredder. That's really what a shredder jam tells you, is that it's time to buy a bigger shredder.
I don't think I need a bigger shredder.
You can always use a bigger shredder.
I could do a bigger. How big is yours?
I am still using what in my mind was just some temporary shredder.
Right.
The problem is it hasn't jammed, so I guess I don't have an excuse to get a new one, is what I'm realizing here.
Lend it to me for a few days, Gray. I'll take care of that.
After the show, I'm going to run all these tax documents through it and try to jam it real good, so I do have an excuse to buy a bigger one.
I did want to ask you what you thought about Google's new logo.
You've seen Google's new logo? You like it?
No, I don't like it.
You don't like it? Really? Interesting. I do like it.
No.
I'm coming down on the side of I do like it. Let me pull it up.
I'm sure in another week or two I'll be used to it and I won't even remember what the old one was, but I don't like it.
Why don't you like it?
I think it's too childish.
There is no arguing that it is very childish. And I'm betting that the design spec was make it look like the magnetic letters that go on people's refrigerators. That has to be what they were going for, because that is exactly what the logo looks like.
Then why do you like it? You like childishness, or like why do you like it?
I don't know. I think this is one case where it works. I mean, Google is just a silly word. You know, Google, Google Gaga,
Yeah.
right? It sounds like babies.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Google's corporate image has always been somewhat playful. I think maybe is the way to describe it.
Playful, simple.
And then this also fits in with their overarching. Google is now a subsidiary of a company called Alphabet. Like this kind of works in with that. So I'm a fan of the new logo, but what I have to say, what I like is not even so much just that the like on the Google search page that this logo, but even they redid their fave icon on the website to be the big G. And also, if you do any voice search with Google, they redid the way their little microphone works to match up with all the little Google colors. I just think they rebranded, and I think they did a good job making it look consistent across a bunch of stuff. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I know lots of people seem to dislike it. I'm a fan. I think it's clean, and I think the childishness is perfectly okay in this moment. Although it did take me longer than usual to actually notice, because I have actually recently finally really switched to DuckDuckGo, which I maligned many podcasts ago for not having great search results, but they have been improving over time. And so now DuckDuckGo is my default search engine everywhere now instead of Google. So I won't actually be looking at the Google logo every single day, but I do like it. I'm going to give them the thumbs up on this one.
Now that the search results are better on DuckDuckGo, why move to them? Why move away from Google? What do you not like about Google? Is it the creepy data stuff, or what do you not like about Google? Because their search results are pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, their search results are pretty good. And at least for the moment, one of the things I like on Google is the option to search for stuff within a time period. So DuckDuckGo doesn't have that for the moment. But often if I'm trying to do some, like I'm looking up a solution to some tech problem where I'm trying to fix something on the computer, it's really helpful to be able to say on Google, show me results that are only from within the last year. Because very often, if you don't do that, you get results from years and years ago that aren't relevant. But so Google definitely still has its purposes. But mainly, I just feel like I want to separate the YouTube business stuff from just like, oh, I'm a person searching for things on Google all day. Like, I'm just aware it's impossible on my browsers to not always be logged into at least one of the YouTube or Google accounts that are directly related to business stuff all the time. And so I just feel, because Google does have that little bit of a creepy, we're always watching you and using all of this data to predict stuff about you, that I do want to put a little bit of a barrier between like, oh, this is the CGP Grey Google account that is used for YouTube and official business stuff, and then separate out like, hi, I'm CGP Grey, a person who's just searching for stuff on the internet. Like, I just want to put a little bit of distance between those two.
Yeah.
And now that DuckDuckGo's results are good enough, I'm happy to have them be the default everywhere. Plus, they have a dark mode, which I quite like, because I'm always a big fan of that.
It always comes down to dark mode.
Dark mode goes a long way.
Yeah, it always comes down to dark mode.
But do you think Google's creepy? Like, this is one of these things where, like, how do you feel about that? Do you think about Google keeping all your search results?
Yeah, they are a bit creepy. It doesn't worry me as much as it worries you, and I'm not as, I was going to say paranoid, but a fairer word is cautious. I'm not as cautious as you. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it depends on my mood on any given day. My mood today is what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I feel like I should do that too. I should move away from them. I don't need them. And, I use them for work enough as it is with my 200,000 G+ accounts and YouTube accounts. I don't need to also be, searching for recipes on them as well.
Paranoid or even cautious is overblowing it, because even I can't quite put my finger on why I feel this way.
Yeah.
Because if you made me sit down and write on a piece of paper, someone says, what do you think is the worst case scenario here? It's very hard to say what that would even be. It's like, oh, Google the algorithms know more about me, and I care why? Like, not really. I have a hard time placing a solid thought on why I feel this way, but I'm just happy to have a little bit of separation between me searching for stuff and the thing that I use for the vast majority of my business now that it is a more practical possibility. But I can't say why, and I don't feel like I have any convincing arguments for why that would be, why anyone should do that.
This episode has been brought to you by Harrys.com. You all know about Harrys by now. They sponsor the show all the time and they're brilliant. I use their products myself. Basically, they're a razor company. You go online. Usually you would start off by buying one of their starter kits, which will come with sort of a handle and blades to go with it. These are interchangeable blades, of course, and sort of cream or a shaving gel. You use it, you shave. Most of you probably know how to shave by now. And then when you need new razors, you go online, order them. They're super cheap, super high quality though. Really great product, really great service. I mean, Harry's was started by two guys who wanted a better way to get this whole shaving thing happening. I think these guys were going into drugstores and chemists and thinking, this is ridiculous. These things are so expensive. It doesn't have to be this way. They found a really great blade supplier from a factory in Germany, and they liked it so much they even bought that company. They bought the factory so they could have their own high quality, excellent German crafted razor blades. That means you're getting kind of factory direct pricing. So you're not paying those huge amounts from companies like, well, you know those other companies, don't you? And you're not having to wait around for some guy to come and unlock the high security Fort Knox case where all those super, super valuable blades are kept. It's crazy. You'd think they're made of gold or something. Now, the starter set is an amazing deal. From $15, you can get the razor, the cream or gel, and the 3 blades to start you off. And when you need more blades, they can be $2 each or less. An 8-pack will be just $15. A 16-pack, that's $25. You've got the convenience of online ordering, the high quality blades, superb handle, and of course those other things like the cream and the gel, and great customer service. They're really worth looking at. If you are ordering, I always say I like the Winston handle. That's kind of a nice silvery one, nice and weighty. And as I've said before, the packaging and branding's really, really nice on these as well. That's one of the reasons I think these also make really nice gifts. If you've got someone with a birthday or something coming up, getting them one of these starter packs from Harry's, well worth considering. And here's the best bit, $5 off your first purchase if you're listening to the podcast here, which obviously you are because I'm talking and you're listening. So go to harrys.com, and use the promo code HI. When you're checking out, HI, and that will get you the $5 off your first purchase. It's already so cheap, $5 is a really big saving. Our thanks to Harry's for supporting the podcast. Bi-weekly weigh-in.
How you feeling over there, buddy?
Heavier.
Yeah, you feeling heavier?
This is feeling increasingly more pointless to me because it's a bit like doing a bi-weekly check on how I'm going making a quilt, and I'm not a quilt maker. But anyway, you seem to be stuck with it now.
You're not a quilt maker?
Well, I'm just not doing any sort of weight loss things at the moment. And in fact, I'm doing quite the opposite this week. Since I last weighed myself, I have put on 1.5 kilos.
Put on 1.5 kilos?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I am down, but just barely 0.9 pounds, which I think comes out to be 0 kilograms. I can never remember how this works.
So you're pretty much the same, a hair down, and I'm up. We are like the worst role models for weight loss ever.
Well, this is exactly it, because the 0.9 down is one of these things where this is well within the uncertainty of measurement, right?
Oh yeah, that comes down to what you're wearing when you weigh yourself and when you last went to the toilet.
Exactly, right? This totally falls down into how long has it been since you've gone to the bathroom territory, which basically doesn't count at all. So I feel like, yes, I have made null progress and you have made negative progress. So we are terrible role models for people, but here we are. Here we are nonetheless.
Now, I thought your Twitter account must have been hacked today.
Oh yeah? Why did you think that?
Have you really started a Twitter account where you're like putting all your personal information about your weight and fat things and stuff on the internet?
Yeah, I guess since we just had a discussion about worrying about how much Google knows about us. Yeah, I have been disappointed in myself as a human being since our last weigh-in because I have made basically no progress. And in no small part, it's because when I'm under a big work pressure, like that is just when I am at my worst in terms of like just eating crap to get through the day. And I just always find myself kind of justifying it as like, well, you're up all night for the third night in a row. Like, you know, you're going to need some soda or something just to stay awake, and you can't possibly drink any more coffee. And I was thinking like, but I always do this. Like I've been doing this for 2 years, this like habit, and essentially like making no progress really. And so I thought, well, how can I step up my own personal accountability? And so, yes, just this morning it arrived. I got a scale that allows me to auto tweet my embarrassing, potentially no progress weight loss. So I have put that up there on the internet as a way of trying to hold a gun to my head, not just once every 2 weeks, which has been unsuccessful for me, but hold a gun to my head once a day. So yeah, that's for real. The @GrayHealthBot really was me. I didn't get hacked.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I think it's a mistake.
Yeah? You think it's a mistake?
Well, it's not a mistake. I just think well, it wouldn't work for me. I'm learning this doesn't work for me because I imagine there would have been a time where I would be so worried about what people think of me and like fear of failure that maybe it would work. But I think having made YouTube videos for so long, I feel like I've almost become inoculated to what people think about me. So the shame of you know, putting on weight or losing weight or doing something embarrassing or doing something good, like it almost is, it doesn't mean much to me anymore. I really appreciate like, you know, feedback and the audiences and things like that, but I just don't think well, look, obviously it's not working. And you seem to have an even stronger ability to not worry about what other people are saying. I don't see how putting it forward like this is going to help you much.
So this is really interesting to me that you're coming at it from this perspective. For me, it's not about like the feedback from other people. It's more about like I have put it out there that I am attempting to do a thing, and if I do not succeed at the thing, my failure is very public. And this is a thing that I have declared is important to me to do. Like it's very different from like putting up a video or something, where if I put up a video that was a total failure, it's like, well, it's going to happen sometimes, right? Sometimes videos aren't good. And if you end up getting 100,000 people saying you suck, like I'm very immune to that kind of feedback at this point. Like anybody who makes a living on the internet, you just have to be. But this feels like I am really putting me on the hook because I have said this is a thing that is important to do to try to lose weight. And if I am not able to do it, then this is in a very public way saying like, I have failed at this thing that I have set out to do. So that's why I have put it out there. It's much more about like what this says about me if I am not able to do it, as opposed to like people tweeting at me @Fatty McFatterson, ! That kind of thing.
I just feel like it's something that if I asked your advice about, you would advise against. Like, I'm just thinking, you know, I can imagine me ringing you up and saying, Gray, I've got this problem and here's what I'm thinking and here's my options. And the sort of advice you normally give would be along the lines of, you know, do a bit of a cost-benefit analysis and what do you hope to achieve? What's the good outcome? What's the bad outcome? And you sort of, you know, you rationally go through it in your way.
We just did this the other day.
We did do it. We did do it the other day on another issue. And the thing that would happen, like what happens here, you either lose the weight and good for you, you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish because, you know, you did and I'm happy for you, or you don't, and how bad you feel about it is just compounded by the fact that you did this health bot thing. And I don't see, you know, I see what you're doing. You're thinking this will help you succeed. This will become, you know, a stick or a carrot. I don't know which it is. Probably more of a stick.
It's much more of a stick. It's a stick.
Yeah, but I think it's just another. You know, you said, oh, I feel a bit bad about myself when I don't do it. This is just going to make you feel even worse about it. I think it's got more downside than upside, but I'm sure you have thought about it and you've made a decision based on that. So you obviously know what you're doing.
But this is one of those cases where the fact that it has more downside is the upside from my perspective. That like I obviously, when I think about like, okay, I've tried to lose weight over the past like year and a half, 2 years sort of, and without much success. Like I'm pretty much the same weight now that I was 2 years ago. And I have kept like turning up the dial of like, okay, what do I need to do to lose weight? And I have made some changes, but none that have been sufficient. And so this to me is just like, well, I'm continuing down this path of like, I want to lose some weight and I need to keep cranking this dial of what are further things that I can do. And this is probably one of the most severe things that I can think of to do, is to make this very public.
This smacks of Last Chance Saloon to me, because, you know, this is the guy that's famous for not telling people what he's working on. You're very, very secretive about the things you do until you do them. And now, for the first time ever, you're saying, this is what I'm doing. Follow me from day one. Like, this goes against everything about you in terms of other aspects of you that I know. Normally, I don't know you're working on a project till the day you've done it. Like, the typical way I would expect grey weight loss to work was that every time I ask you about how your weight loss is going, you would say, nothing, not talking about it, and change the subject. And then, like, 6 months later, I'd see you, and you'd be like a waif. And I'd be like, oh, my goodness. And you're like, haha, surprise, I didn't tell you, but look at me. Aren't I amazing? But this time, it's the exact opposite. You're like, come and follow me. Look, you know, this is desperation stakes, if you ask me.
But it's funny because in a way, I don't regard the weight as like personal information, even though I know for some people it feels very personal. Whereas what I'm working on, it's like, oh no, of course I would never tell anybody what I'm working on. And there are lots of aspects of my life that I'm very private about. But how fat I am, I feel like that's not private. Like, people can look at me and they can see.
Actually, in your case, that's not the case, is it though? You're kind of the one exception to that. You're the one person the strangers can't look at.
I wasn't meaning in my professional life. I mean just like when I'm walking around.
Yeah.
Like you can't fool anybody about what you look like, because that's what you look like. So
yeah, but those people in the street don't know you're trying to lose the weight. It's your sort of fans and followers that do. If you were walking around with a sign on your shirt saying, "Hello, I am trying to lose weight," and you walked around the train stations and streets of London wearing that, well, that would be different.
That'd be crazy. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
No, that'd be a terrible idea. I would advise me against that very strongly. There's no upside
but
there.
essentially, that's kind of what it feels like you're doing. You're doing on Twitter, except you do have the advantage of people not knowing what you look like. You know, I'm in videos every week and stuff like that, so you know, people look at me and see me, and I post photos of myself because I'm a normal person. But
always a little dig. You can never let it slide.
it wouldn't be Hello Internet if I didn't make my little grey jokes.
No, it wouldn't be.
But anyway, I think it's cool. I think it's really interesting what you've done, and I may even follow it. What's it called? At what? At Grey Healthbot?
Yeah, at Grey Healthbot, I think is what it is.
Cool. Do it, man.
All right, we'll see.
That 2 weeks. Well, it won't be a surprise for me in 2 weeks because I'll know exactly how you're doing. But
yeah, this
I'll
gives
tell
you
in
an
2
unfair
weeks.
advantage in some ways. You know exactly how things are going.
No, I'm not. I do need to get my act together. I need to try harder. This weather's not helping.
No. Yeah, heading into the dark season in England doesn't help anybody.
I need to rejoin a gym, maybe.
Yeah.
I do like swimming.
Oh yeah?
Swimming's really good for me creatively. Like, that's where I have all my best ideas in. Have we ever discussed this? I have all my best ideas in water. That's why I have really, really long showers, because that's where I just sit and think, or stand and think.
Okay, that makes sense, because when I last visited your house, you were discussing with me this engineering problem that you were having, where you wanted to have a minimum of 60-minute, 90-minute long showers, hot showers, and the plumbers were telling you about how this was not possible, and you were basically saying, make it possible. And there were going to be additional boilers that were installed on the upper levels of your house to satisfy the enormous quantities of hot water that you require for your morning shower. But this makes more sense now, because if you're having your best ideas there, this is like a business expense. So this makes way more sense. Way more sense.
Yeah. Just so that people don't leave comments and email me, because that would be just a real pain in the butt. I do not have 60-minute showers, and there was no talk of installing another boiler for me to have long showers.
That is a lie. There were discussions of additional boilers.
You've misinterpreted or misunderstood a few things there. But I do have unusually long showers, and my desire for long showers was a factor in deciding some of the equipment we had installed in terms of pumps and things.
Right, yeah. And the water reserve.
There was not. Yeah, that's right. The local water company had to build a new reservoir, and I agreed to fund it on a Kickstarter so that they could I could have my showers. Yeah. Anyway, I do have very long showers.
But all your best ideas come in water.
Yeah, I do. I feel more creative in water for some reason, and I want to stop now before I sound any more like a lovey darling.
No,
yes.
it's
my most creative moments are when I'm in the water. Oh, darling.
It's just because you're separated from all the other stuff. Taking a shower, it gives your brain a little moment to relax and make some other connections. And
maybe
swimming is going to be the same thing, right? With swimming, you are forced to be separate from other stuff.
Yeah.
It's like when I go to the gym, I'm very conscious of not listening to podcasts, not having something that occupies my mind. It's not quite the same as being in the shower where your brain really is just all on your own, because I'll listen to music instead. But it's like 25% that. So I'm not surprised that swimming is when you have all your creative ideas. Yeah. So more swimming for Brady.
I was going to say the shower is one place where you can't sort of be on the internet and on Wi-Fi, but that's not true for Destin. Destin has FaceTimed me from his shower before. That's not even a lie.
I would believe it. I would totally believe it.
It was family friendly, by the way, before people make silly comments. But
let their imaginations run wild, Brady. That man's got to get the maximum out of every hour of the day.
Shall we do our corners corner? We have so many corners now that we need a corner to store all the corners.
This is just the Hello Internet polyhedron.
What people do when listening to the Hello Internet podcast corner.
Oh, very good. I better hear some paper.
Yep, I got some paper here. There we go. I've gone for a few more just normal ones this time. I feel like we've been upping the ante and raising the bar so much that short of, I don't know what, an alien, I don't know how we could top what we've been having lately. So I want to go back to just a bit of normality. And also, I want the listeners to know you don't have to be a fighter pilot to listen to Hello Internet. It helps, but you don't have to be. So here we go. This is Mike. Mike is a professional magician and mind reader. He says, I make my living by doing impossible things, which is a good thing he's addressed this email to me and not you, because I don't think that sentence would go down very well with you. But then he comes back to it. Most of my work is entertaining guests at weddings. However, couples are terrible at planning their big day, and when I turn up to start entertaining people, they're always running late. I therefore have to wait around before starting the magic and mind reading. I take this opportunity to listen to Hello Internet. It puts me in the right mood to do amazing things. Following your recent discussions on free will, I've used it as a theme in the magic. Someone makes an apparently free choice and I show them I'd predicted it beforehand. This really freaks them out.
Oh, nice. Because there's no free will. That's why they get freaked out.
Exactly. I like this one. This comes from Martin from Canada. Mm-hmm. My wife and I took a road trip to the east coast of Canada in May this year. It was nearly 6,000 kilometres over 12 days. And before you ask, he's put in brackets 3,700 miles for the robot.
Thank you.
My wife, who is a professional musician and was doing a performance tour, does not drive a standard transmission, so I had to do all the driving myself. We were able to listen to episodes 1 to 26 and half of 27 on that one trip.
That's some marathoning.
That's amazing. Has anyone listened to more consecutive Hello Internets in one batch than that? I'd love to hear from you if you have. Martin has since caught up and he appears to be on real time now. So he says he's listening normally like some kind of peasant.
It is a sad moment when you catch up on a podcast that you like. I know that feeling of going through the back catalog and then it's like, oh no, now I have to wait. It's terrible.
It is bad. It's like that with watching like box sets too. I've just finished a big series that I've been really getting really into and I just finished it. And then we went to download the next series and it was like, it's not out yet. They haven't even made it yet.
But I want to watch it now.
We were bereft. I'll tell you what it is. It's The Good Wife, and it's a really good show. We've really enjoyed it, but we've caught up with it now. Let me tell you, listening to the two of you just melted the hours away. You were able to put my mind into some magical Zen-like trance, and I can't thank you enough for turning what would have been an utterly awful amount of time in the car into a wonderful trip. Here's the best part. I was so happy that as soon as I got home, I immediately became one of your Patreons. That's patreon.com/Hello Internet. Is that right? Is it Hello Internet? /Hello Internet? Go on. You know you want to. So thank you, Martin. But I got this email from this person called Thomas, who is a student, and he had like a car crash, and he rolled his car over, and he sent me a picture of the crashed car, but he said I can't share it. And he said he crashed his car. He said, when he crashed, I was in a bit of a panic mode and thoughts raced through my head. And I have to say, the moments on Hello Internet when you spoke of the hard as nails mentality helped give me the push to calm down and get myself together and get up out of the car. Thankfully, I managed to come out with only minor cuts and bruises, but I don't think I would have had the guts to get out without you and Gray in my head. Now, I know he's taking the mickey.
I don't think so, Brady. I think they're going to be using Brady hard as nails as a visualization tool in the military soon.
Do you think so?
They're going to be telling guys, you need to be more like Brady. Get through this. Chuff it up mentally.
I mean, I know you're joking, Gray, but I'm enjoying it still. So the reason I wanted to read it, actually, Gray, was I wanted to ask you if you've ever been in a car crash.
Yeah, I was in a car crash. I guess, I don't know, maybe almost 10 years ago now, 8 years ago. It's been a long time, but yeah.
This is something I did not know about you. Is it something you ever talk about, or is it sort of a private matter? Or
no, it's just, I mean, just like, you know, it's a car crash. We were, my wife and I were T-boned going across an intersection, and yeah.
All right. Anyone hurt, or were you okay? Or
it was one of these things. It was shockingly lucky because one, the guy T-boned us directly outside of the police department. So there were just police and people there immediately on the scene, which is very reassuring because they were in the building right across from where it happened. We were also very lucky because the car almost flipped over. And if it had, it would have landed on a bunch of children who were waiting for a school bus on the other side of the intersection.
Oh.
And then to top it off, the thing that was quite relieving to me was that it was a Toyota Prius that we were in. And my wife and I will never, ever rent or drive a car that does not have side impact airbags now, because the medical people on the scene were like, yeah, your wife would have died if you didn't have side impact airbags here. I would have been fine and my wife would have been dead. So if you're getting a car, check out and make sure they have side impact airbags. It is a necessity for us at this point. So it's always cheery.
Where were you? It was in America, was it?
Yeah, it was on one of our road trips in America.
Has it changed your attitude to driving?
Yeah, a little bit. I've been a little bit more gun shy about driving ever since then. But the problem is also that this was the last big road trip that my wife and I did, and it just so happened that very naturally I have driven very, very little since then normally, because I've been living my whole life in London. I very rarely visit America. Where my parents happen to be, I usually don't need to drive very much at all. So I haven't driven a whole lot since then, and it's a combination of just not needing to and also being like slightly hesitant about driving because of that. But the autos are coming soon, so I don't really have to worry about it.
Yeah.
A couple of years, it's all set.
Well, they'll be smashing into each other all the time when someone hacks the network.
Nah, I'm not worried about, but I've honestly been just ticking down the time until autos are available, because I can't wait to do another road trip in a self-driving car. Like when I can get my hands on a real self-driving car, I will definitely take the time to do another road trip, because that will seem like magic, but magic that I have been waiting for my entire life. Like I cannot wait to do that. Hurry up, autos.
I've just got a quick one here from Elia from Bern in Switzerland. Just saying, I know I can't possibly one-up some of the other submissions to the corner, but just for the sake of diversity, I wanted to let you know that I'm a corporal in the Swiss military, and I listen to the podcast a lot while driving to the shooting range. It helps calm me down and focus. So I just thought that was a nice one. I'm really fascinated by the Swiss Army.
Yeah, why?
So Ilya, if you want to email again, Ilya, tell me all sorts of stuff about what it's like being in the Swiss Army and all those hidden bases you have, and Do you get given, like, do you have a Swiss Army knife? Do they give you all a Swiss Army knife? I love Swiss Army knives.
They have to have a Swiss
I want
Army
to know more
knife.
about the Swiss Army. This email was too short.
It would be madness if they didn't have Swiss Army knives in the Swiss Army.
Like standard issue. And do they get to choose color, or do they all have the red handle?
Nah, it's got to be red. Military is a uniform. Everybody gets the red handle one.
I think a Swiss Army knife was one of the best presents I ever got from my dad.
A Swiss Army knife is the best present that any father can get his son. Right? As soon as a kid's old enough to be trusted with something sharp, Swiss Army knife is the way to go. Do you still carry a multi-tool?
I don't carry it with me, but I've got a Swiss Army knife here on my desk that I use all the time. But I don't carry it with me around, like, away from home. But I use it a lot. Like, it sits on my desk in my pen pot. That's how often I use it. So
The thing about, like, a father giving his son the Swiss Army knife thing is you immediately realize all the circumstances under which it is actually quite handy to have a little tool around you. Like, as soon as you have it, there are a million circumstances under which you want to use it. Swiss Army knives, very cool.
they are cool. So let us know if you have one, Ilya. There we go. So there's some listeners. I've got lots more. Keep them coming. I really enjoy them, and I'll try and dribble a few more out over time as Gray lets me. Can I do a quick plane crash corner, Gray?
I couldn't possibly stop you.
Well, before we do this, let me tell you this. Let me give you the prelim here.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was away for the weekend a few weekends ago, and it just so happened that coincided with a stamp and postcard fair coming to, like, a local school where I was. So all these, like, you know how these things work.
I don't know how stamp and postcard fairs work. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Basically, lots of dealers of, stamp sellers and postcard sellers and things of this genre.
Oh, okay. It's like a trade show.
Like a trade show, kind of. Yeah, like that. So
Got
they
it.
get a big school gymnasium and they all set up loads and loads of tables and they sell their wares. And I love this. And because my wife was away, because my wife's like a real get-to-the-point kind of woman, whereas I like to just browse for hours and hours.
I can see that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah. So I said, this is brilliant. So I just went there for hours and hours, and I just sat in the chairs and went through all the postcards. I'm not that into stamps, but I am into a lot of that's kind of, what do you call all this stuff? What's the word? The fill-in, I don't know, stuff to do with postage and stuff like that. I really enjoy.
Philology.
Anyway, I was going through all this stuff. I was having a great time, and then suddenly I saw a little section in one of these tables, and it had written "Crash Mail." This was a new thing for me. Now, if you switch to video, I got well into this. I got well into this.
Oh, we got to switch to video now. Okay.
We've got to switch to video because I made some purchases. Let me show you what I purchased.
I wish, Brady, I had been recording the video of my screen when you said, "Let me make some purchases," because you had just the brightest twinkle in your eye. You were so excited, like a little boy, with this. I can't wait to see what this is.
These are in their protective plastic sleeves, but you should be able to. You tell the viewers what you see. Can you get a good look at that or not? There's.
It looks like I'm looking at an envelope. And it says, well, it's his handwritten address on it, and says damaged in plane crash in 1955.
That's
I can't
right.
read the
There's
name
like
of the place.
There's a stamp. It's Hollywood, but not that Hollywood. It's a different Hollywood. So there's that, and that damaged in plane crash thing is like stamped on it. There's like a handwritten letter, and here's some more. Mm-hmm. There's another letter. And that one you see it says there, salvaged mail from an air crash in Prestwick in 1954. And this one here was in a shipwreck here, and it's got a stamp on it saying damaged by immersion in seawater, and it looks all damaged, like when you see it.
Yeah, it does. It looks exactly like what you would ask a Hollywood person to make up as a prop for a damaged piece of paper.
There's another one, and here's one last one. This one's got scorched. This one's in terrible condition.
Yeah, this one looks like it was in a fire or something.
So basically...
Now you are reading the personal correspondence of the dead from plane crashes. That's what you're doing?
It's not the personal correspondence. If you don't have to look at me anymore if you don't want to. You can. Or you can.
I don't know, Brady. It's so weird. I'm gonna minimize you.
Basically, it turns out these things called crash covers or crash mail is a whole subgenre of collecting.
Oh, I love the world sometimes.
When a plane crashes, I mean, quite often it is carrying postage, obviously, airmail in bags underneath the plane. And if the mail is recoverable, what happens is the mail agency will get it and they'll stamp on it with a stamp saying this was in a crash, often because you need to explain why it was delayed or why it looks a bit worse for wear and things like that.
Right.
The person still receives their letter. They'll open it and read it and do what they want with it. But sometimes the envelope, not the letter itself, but the envelope is retained, finds its way into these collecting communities and becomes quite a cherished item. This is like a letter that survived a plane crash is considered a collectible thing, an interesting thing. And I found that so fascinating. I got so taken by the idea of it, of these little mementos that had gone through this adventure and come out the other side, that I couldn't help myself, and I spent more money than I should have buying them. And I've been looking up a little bit about the actual crashes that these letters were in, and I'm planning on, I might write a blog or something, and all about them and tell their story, because I've gotten really into it. And I don't know, I'm not going to rule out maybe even buying some more if I get a little bit addicted. But for now, these 5 will do. And I'll take some pictures of them and we'll put them in the show notes so people can have a look at them as well. But I just thought it was a nice thing and something different for Plane Crash Corner.
And it might not be quite the right fit, but this feels almost like it could be a bit of a lanyap video on something for objectivity. I mean, I know that objectivity focuses, on Keith and his work, but this feels like it could. There's something to talk about here of these objects as representative of these events.
Yeah, you're right. In fact, that's exactly what I'll do. I feel stupid that I didn't think to do it. I was thinking, if only I had a YouTube channel that has something to do with old objects. I kind of lose track of them sometimes.
It's understandable.
That's exactly what I'll do it for. Yeah. You're right. I can't believe I hadn't thought of that. I will do it. I mean, obviously, most of the objectivity videos do focus on the Royal Society, but there's no hard and fast rule, and we do sometimes freestyle it elsewhere. So I'll do it on my personal objects and tell the story of these envelopes one day. Good idea. You're good at good idea, Gray. You should make YouTube videos for a living.
I should give that a go. I hear that I'm mostly a podcaster these days.
Well, it seems like it, but you are an online Swiss Army knife.
It's very generous of you.
Let's quickly try my new experimental corner as the final corner in Brady's Corner of Corners. I suggested that we talk about things we were obsessed with as a kid, as a little corner.
Yeah, you brought this up last time, and you also messaged me this morning asking me to try to think about things that I was fascinated with as a child that I am still fascinated with as an adult. And I was having a difficult time with this, and I felt like you were getting really frustrated with me over instant message, which is many of our conversations.
We are often on different wavelengths with our instant messaging. That's why quite often when there's something I want to talk to you about, you're like, oh yeah, send me a message. I'm like, can I just call you?
Yeah, you know what? I will give you carte blanche to just call me. You can just call me anytime.
I would never call you with that warning, Gray.
No, you can just call me. It's fine. It's fine. I'll see that happy Brady face on my phone. And unlike every other time when my phone rings and I assume, oh God, it must be some kind of emergency, I think I can eventually train myself to then think, oh no, it's just Brady, and we need to talk on the phone because we can't really talk very well on Instant Messenger because I am terrible at understanding what you're trying to tell me.
Have you come up with something that you think might fit? And I'll tell you if you've done well or not. I understand you don't yet understand this corner, so I won't judge. But tell me, and I don't blame you for not understanding it, because basically the nature of this corner is it's just what I want
the nature of this corner is read Brady's mind.
Yeah, basically, yes.
Okay, so I had something broad that you didn't like, but then I realized, oh, actually, maybe there is a little sub thing here. But as a kid, I was always fascinated by robots. I always just loved robots as a kid. I had lots of little robot toys.
Ooh,
and
yeah.
as you do as a kid, like you'd think about robots and an amazing future with robots and maybe one day being a robot. And like that was the kind of stuff that I know the kid me used to think about and that adult me still does think about and has the feeling of, the future kid me was waiting for is finally arriving. But that I am still very interested in developments in robots in the modern world. Does this fit what you were looking for? Is this good?
Yeah. Did you have Of all your robot toys, did you have like a favorite, like one that sticks in your mind the most, like your
I had
premier
so
robot
many
toy?
related robot toys. I had tons of Transformers, and I had just lots and lots. I remember, like in wood shop class, you had to build something, and I tried to build a robotic arm, and was very sad that, of course, it's just made out of wood, and it's not a real working arm that can do anything. I'm just trying to pull it up here because when I was last in America, my parents were trying to go through some of the stuff that they had left over from my childhood. And one of the things that I were going through was, as I mentioned before on the show, that my mom was a flight attendant for United for very many years. And when I was a little kid, she used to bring me toys from Japan because Japan was her regular flight. And she brought me, when I was a little kid, these Transformer robots, but they were also the letters of the alphabet. I had those for forever, and I absolutely loved them as a little kid. And it was it was quite the blast from the past as a grown up to find a box full of these things when I went back and I was going through some of my old stuff in my parents' house last time I was there.
Would you describe yourself as having more of a collector's attitude to the robots, or were you into playing with them and like bashing them against each other and making them do things? Or would you like to sort of display them and catalog them and have them on the shelf and collect the set and that sort of thing?
No, I was totally into playing with them as a kid. I was not a collector kid. I've always been rather rough with the objects that I owned.
Right.
So no, I was not displaying them prominently.
Did you ever make robots like kind of Lego Meccano type things?
No, I never really made robots, but I always was very interested in computer programming, and I was always frustrated by some of the limitations at the time of, like, you can't really do anything with this in the real world. And I do look with envy at some of the stuff that's available for kids these days with relatively simple robotic tools that are programmable. And I think, oh man, I would have loved that as a kid, but it was not available to me then.
Were you sort of like a young visionary and you were aware that the robots of the future wouldn't be these kind of, humanoid C-3POs and they were more likely to take a different form? Or was little naive Gray thinking we'd all have like bicentennial man living in our house and fetching coffee and things like that?
No. I definitely, even as a kid, was always thinking like, oh, these Star Wars robots, they're fun, but they're almost like trolls or elves. They're not real. That this is not what people working in robotics are really going for.
Right.
So I was very interested in like some of the very primitive robotic stuff that was around. But I was aware when movies were just being movies, like the Johnny Five movies, like Short Circuit with Johnny Five alive. It's like, okay, this is just, like, it would be awesome if robots were like this, but this is just a total fantasy. Even though robots are a real thing, but this is not a real representation of what they are.
Robots. Robots goes on Gray's list.
But so now my understanding is that this corner is really just stuff Brady wants to talk about corner. So what did you want to bring up?
My one for the list today that I was obsessed with is going to be extinction. The whole idea of animals going extinct, like, completely fascinated me as a child. Yeah? I just thought it was like, it had everything. It had like nature and drama and, death. And
Did it bring up your own mortality as well?
No, I don't. I very rarely extrapolated the extinction of animals to the extinction of humans. I think that's something that perhaps came later. Obviously dinosaurs are foremost in a young Brady's thinking when he's thinking about animals that go extinct. But also, as a young Australian, I think the pin-up boy for extinction is the Tasmanian tiger. So the thylacine, as it is also known. So as a little boy in Australia, besides dinosaurs, of course, the pin-up boy of extinction is the Tasmanian tiger.
I am unfamiliar with the Tasmanian tiger.
See, I thought you were going to say, oh, of course, like that's a bit of a cliche. But then it's one of these moments where I realise this is an Australian thing. The thylacine. The last one died, I think, in 1936. And it's like...
Oh, I do know this thing. I do know this.
Yeah,
I've seen pictures of this.
It is one of the... Along with like something like the dodo, I think it's one of the cliched animals that went extinct. Animals. So that's obviously a real a real favourite of ours. And because I could go to like the South Australian Museum as well and see like a stuffed one. So to see a stuffed one and be told they no longer exist, that's quite a powerful thing. And I think extinction still has quite a powerful hold certainly over my brain. What do you think about extinction? Are you kind of this kind of, pragmatic, well, it's part of, the way that nature works, or do you think of it as a kind of potent thing as well that has an effect on you?
I mean, it's both things. The problem is, I think the term in the industry is talking about charismatic megafauna, that we have as humans great overemphasis and concern for charismatic big animals. And we are much more concerned about the extinction of, say, pandas, even when pandas seem to be doing everything they possibly can to make themselves extinct. Pandas just want to lay down for a long sleep, and humans will not let them because we love them and they're adorable. So it's like extinction is a very broad brush thing, whereas there are many creatures where it's like, oh, mosquitoes, if I could snap my fingers and make them all extinct, I would. So it depends on who you're talking about with extinction.
Would it be bad if mosquitoes went extinct? Are they one of these things where, but they're an important part of this whatever cycle, or are they just bad news all around?
They're just bad news all around.
They're bad boys, are they? Right.
The thing that I've looked into it is that people usually argue about, there's so many things that eat mosquitoes, but there's nothing that mosquitoes are the majority of its diet.
Okay.
So animals would, they'd figure things out if the mosquitoes were gone. They would just eat slightly more of something else. And I'm frankly much more concerned about the suffering of humans than I am about the suffering of mosquitoes, right? Or a bird somewhere being slightly more hungry, so it has to eat an additional caterpillar. Like, in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to say that the human suffering matters more because humans are able to conceptualize the suffering.
But doesn't the balance then get thrown out? Like you say, the bird will eat an extra caterpillar, but then suddenly too many caterpillars get tipped over the balance, and then this dies and that dies. And so whenever we mess with things for what we think is the greater good, don't we always muck it up?
What do you mean? What do you mean always? Like, have you seen Civilization? Civilization is nothing but us constantly messing with stuff, and it's a net gain. I think it's just easy to focus on the times that we've messed stuff up.
What are some animals we've driven to extinction?
Okay, but now you're talking about a specific thing about with extinctions. You're saying whenever we mess with anything.
You gave the example of getting rid of all the mosquitoes. I'm not saying we shouldn't build roads or have cities or have running water, but I'm talking about, you said you'd be happy to get rid of all the mosquitoes.
Yeah, I would without a doubt. Snap my fingers and roll the dice on getting rid of all the mosquitoes.
I'm not even saying you're wrong, Gray. You're probably right. I'm just wondering if you can, for my intellectual curiosity, tell me another animal that we wiped out. It's quite possible we have. I don't know. Maybe there is an animal that was just bad news and we got rid of some little bad bug or something.
It wouldn't be an animal. My go-to example is polio, although you can argue whether or not polio is alive or not. But that is something that we certainly drove to extinction. And you know what? No one's crying sad tears over polio and how it knocked over the internal ecosystem of humans. Or I just think like any kind of parasites, that you try to get rid of in human populations. Like we've, what is it? It's like tapeworms in the United States are basically extinct. And you know what? The ecosystem in the US isn't worse because of that. I'm not going to rule out extinction as universally bad. It depends on what's going extinct.
All right. I was.
Don't tweet me, environmentalists. I'm not interested.
No, that's right. I didn't realize, because I went onto Wikipedia to look at some extinct animals beforehand, because I'm no expert. One of the top things that came up was that there was a whole page dedicated to animals from our good old favourite Reunion Island that have gone extinct.
Oh yeah.
Which I didn't realise it was such a famous island that it has its own extinction page. So I thought, and I'm not going to go through the list, but I thought I'd give a special shout out to the Reunion swamp hen.
Yeah.
Just because I like arbitrary things.
You do love your arbitrary things.
I know we've got a soft spot for the African penguin because there's one named after you.
Right.
But I was wondering whether or not you'd let me name the Reunion swamp hen the official bird of the Hello Internet podcast.
No. Now you're just, if I give you an inch,
Why not?
If I give you an inch on this, Brady, you'll be naming everything the something or other official thing of Hello Internet.
How does it affect you? How does it affect you that we have an
I
official bird?
I don't even know how it affects me. But shouldn't clearly the penguin be the official bird of all the animals you have to pull out of the hat? Why is it going to be a penguin?
Well, no, I think it should be the reunion swamp hen.
Right, yeah.
And I'm sticking with it. And if you can't give me a better reason why it can't be, and if we can't have an official bird of the podcast,
this is the Google thing all over. I don't have any reasons. I just feel resistant to it for some.
Like if we were going to have like an official flag, obviously that has to be a joint decision, and like things like the name and logos and things. Mm-hmm. But surely an official bird of the podcast, which you couldn't give two hoots about, you could just let me have an official bird of the podcast, can't you? Like you have official. I guess the official flower of our podcast, like our flora, should probably be that emoji you always send me. But I don't think I want to go with the reunion swamp hen as our official bird, because I also think it will be a really good trick question in pub quizzes of the future when people say, what is the official bird of Hello Internet? Everyone will say the African penguin.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's a trick question.
I see what you're going for. It's
actually the reunion swamp hen.
Right.
The extinct reunion swamp hen.
This is like the what animal are the Canary Isles named after? It's like, oh no, it's not birds, it's not canaries, it's dogs. It's canine.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what you want? All right, fine. For pub trivia purposes, you can have your reunion swamp hen. Excellent.
Now, the next thing I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about reunion swamp hen t-shirts. No. No, I was looking up other. Now that we've cleared that up, I also didn't realize this because I'm obviously don't know enough stuff, especially about America. But I didn't realize the California grizzly on their flag is extinct.
I didn't realize that either.
Since the 1920s, California grizzly. Look it up.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. California grizzly bear. But I mean, we still have grizzly bears.
Yes, but not that one. Not that iconic one.
An extinct subspecies of grizzly. But it looks like a grizzly bear. I couldn't. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at this picture thinking, I can't tell the difference between this and a grizzly bear, but I'm looking at a picture of a grizzly bear. So that might not be a fair comparison. So I was looking at this picture and I was like, that looks just like a grizzly. But the caption was, this is a grizzly, which is the closest living relative to the thing that we don't have. Let's see. Were they bigger? Oh, it was the biggest bear ever. Oh, see, that's disappointing. If it was smaller, then it's like, oh, okay, well, whatever. But if they're bigger than modern grizzlies, then that's terrifying. Yeah, that's a loss for hikers in the woods.
Because Americans love things that are big.
Yeah,
you know, our bears are bigger. Our bears are 10% bigger. Do you know one thing I always notice when I'm in America compared to other countries? How much more often the merits of food is advertised by the size of it.
How else are you supposed to measure food, Brady?
Well, but exactly. But it's never like this is the healthiest or this is the most delicious or this. It's always this is 20% bigger than the other one or it's now 50% bigger than it was last week. You now get 2 and it's even cheaper. It's always like it's volume.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how else you would measure food.
No.
That's the relevant thing with food.
I was looking up other American animals that became extinct because you only really care about America most of the time.
Yeah, that's fair. as the expat.
The Jamaican rice rat.
Uh-huh.
Could we have an official rice rat?
No, we can't have an. See, this is exactly.
I promise this wasn't planned beforehand. This is just coming to my head now. But I did notice there were lots of different kinds of rice rats.
Yes, but
so if there were lots of different rice rats, we should have an official rice rat.
The thing is, you don't have to plan it ahead of time. This is just what happens with you. I'm like, don't get me wrong. I wasn't thinking that you were scheming about how can you get an official rice rat. I just know this is the path down which we have started. Now that I have given you an inch and we're going to have an official everything for the podcast. And several podcasts from now, we're going to have a little section where you decommission the rice rat because you realize how ridiculous it is, or because the rice rat community didn't respond to you with the gratefulness that you thought you should have received. Like that's That's where this is going.
I think it would be brilliant to have an official rice rat. How many podcasts can claim to have official rice rats? And imagine then if all other podcasts all decided they would, like another one decided that they would have the marsh rice rat as their official rice rat.
Yeah.
I don't even know what a rice rat is.
I'm not even looking at the page because it doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter what it is. What it is it's a Brady fascination at the moment.
All right. Well, I'm calling it the Jamaican rice rat is the official rice rat of the podcast. I won't hear otherwise. Anyway. We must get an official flag of the podcast, Gray.
Yeah, we do have to work on that.
We must do that.
We do have to work.
It could have a little Jamaican rice rat in the center of it.
No, we already have 2 designs that we're talking about. We have to narrow down from the 2 that we were discussing.
That's news to me. That's very good news. You'll have to tell me what those 2 are at some point.
Sent me the 2.
No, I sent you one the other day and you said, no, I want to think about it. And you never got back to me.
Oh, that sounds possible.
Anyway, I was talking about extinctions at some point, but I think we'll just add that to my list of things I was obsessed with as a kid, along with volcanoes. And
I think we have extincted that topic.
It is. We're done. All
right.
And now, before we move on, I would just like to give a moment's silence to the extinct Jamaican rice rats. Official rice rat of the Hello Internet podcast.
Today's episode of Hello Internet is brought to you in part by Hover. Hover is the best way to buy and manage domain names. I speak from personal experience because when I go into Hover, at the bottom of the page, it shows that there are 4 little tabs that I can click to see all of the domain names that I have purchased with Hover. Over the years, I have tried many different ones, and Hover is without a doubt the best. When you get an idea for some project, a website, a product, whatever it may be, you want to secure a domain name. You want to make sure that you can grab that name before somebody else does. And when that pops into your head, go to Hover to do it. They really do take out all of the hassle and confusion of registering a domain name. It's a service that I really appreciate because they just try to take all of the annoyance out of it for you. If you have domain names somewhere else, don't worry, Hover can automatically transfer them for you. And again, I have tried to transfer domain names between registrars, and they make it intentionally difficult. But with Hover, you don't even have to think about it. Just tell them what you want moved, and they can move it for you. In addition, they have a new service where if you want to connect the domain name that you have purchased with something like a Squarespace site or something like Shopify.com, again, they'll set it up just for you. So someone can go to yourdomainname.com and it automatically shows up as the website that you have made. This is exactly what I have done with Squarespace. And you can do it with just a ton of services online. They also keep things simple because there's no upselling. There's no boxes that you have to untick when you're going through the checkout process. It really is just this breath of fresh air. Just float, just hover through your domain name purchase experience. I recommend them very, very highly. Now, of course, Hover wants to support Hello Internet, and if you want to let Hover know that their support has worked, when you go to register your domain name, the idea that you have, use coupon code FLAGS. That'll get you 10% off your first purchase. So go to hover.com, pick out the domain name that you want, use offer code FLAGS for 10% off. Thanks to Hover for supporting the show.
Now, last podcast, as many podcasts before, we found ourselves speaking about flags.
The Super Bowl of flags that is currently going on in New Zealand. And boy, has it been a dramaful couple of weeks since we put out that podcast.
Could we have timed the podcast any better? Basically, it came out the day before they put their long list down to a short list of 4. It's almost like they reacted to our podcast and we kind of set the wheels turning in New Zealand. They said, okay, Brady and Gray have spoken. It's time for us to sort this crap out.
Honestly, it felt that way to me, even though I had to keep reminding myself, like, New Zealand didn't do this because you just released the podcast. But somehow in my mind, the next day when everyone was saying that they'd come out with the shortlist, I was like, oh yeah, I'm glad they finally did that now that we have given them the kick in the butt necessary to get the next stage of this moving. But no, it was just a lucky coincidence. But I did find my brain somehow taking credit for this.
So they have narrowed it down to 4, amongst which they must choose one to go head-to-head with the current flag at some stage.
Yeah, so now, here's the thing, is I was a little bit confused when we were talking last time, because last time we were talking about I said the short list because I thought we were at the short list stage, but in the last episode, I should have been talking about the long list. That was the 40 semi-finalists in this competition.
39, because one got struck out on copyright grounds.
And so what I thought was going to happen was, of those 40, I thought that 40 was going to be put to a vote in the alternative vote method that they are using in New Zealand, where people could say, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are my favorites, and then I'm done with it. That's what I thought was going to happen, but that is not what happened. The committee then selected, of those 39, 4, and those 4 are the ones that New Zealanders are going to vote on. So that is what is going to happen next.
So they have a public vote on those 4, and then another public vote on the winner of those 4 versus the current one.
Yes, that's what's going to happen. And
are both these votes done with people turning out to the polls, or is there some kind of online component to the first stage? It seems silly to have people actually go to the polls twice.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if they're going to physical polls for the vote, or if it can be done online. If New Zealand is one of those modern countries like Estonia that has their act together and lets people vote on things online, or if, like America, you still need to trudge out to the physical voting polls somewhere. I do not know the answer to that.
Okay. Anyway, even this narrowing it down to 4 has plenty to talk about, though.
Yes. This has been, I would say, quite contentious. So if we look at the 4, there is the Koru design. I know I mentioned last time, which is the black and white spiral design, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
There is one flag that is just a fern going across the diagonal, and one half of the flag is white with the fern having black leaves, and the other half is the flag is black with the fern having white leaves. Mm-hmm. And then they chose 2 designs that are exactly the same except for a palette swap, which have the New Zealand fern on the left side of the flag, basically, and the Southern Cross on the right side of the flag. And one version of this is red, white, and blue, and one version of this is black, white, and blue. But they are essentially the same flag. But this means that of the 4 designs, 2 are functionally identical, and 3 are very, very similar, because the other black and white fern flag, the fern is in the same kind of diagonal direction. It's just missing the Southern Cross. But it's really 3 very similar flags, 1 different flag. And I have to say, we were discussing last time that New Zealand had just an overabundance of excellent flags to choose from.
Yeah.
And this narrowing down to 4 is terrible.
They've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Yeah. I have to agree with this, because here, I'm going to lay my cards on the table right now. I'm a big fan of the Koru design, the black and white spiral. I like that. I think if I was living in New Zealand, there's no choice but to vote for that one, right? I think it's the best of these 4. But even to me, it feels like if that wins, it is an illegitimate victory, because it is up against the mediocrist of competitions, and also just hard to differentiate competitions. So even if the Koru wins, I will feel like, it should have been up against stronger flags and won.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, if I have to put money on the table, I might actually predict that New Zealand doesn't end up changing their flag.
Do you know what? It has occurred to me that this whole thing has been sabotaged. This is what happened with the Australian, in my opinion, which is just, I'm just one person. My opinion,
I'm going to cut out the "in my opinion" part.
Yeah.
You just tell your story.
And I'd made mention of it before, but there was this famously, a lot of Australians thought that Australia should become a republic, and then there was a group that thought we should stay, under the monarchy, and it was a strong feeling that the reason we stayed as part of the monarchy was that the vote between the Republicans was very cleverly split. It almost like they pitted the Republicans against each other about which model of republicanism should be used.
Right.
They split the Republican vote, and therefore the monarchy won the day. Fair enough.
And you were using a first past the post vote. So yes, the strategy is to split the alternative or to split the opposition, and then so that's
and I
what
feel
happened.
like that's kind of what's happened. If you wanted to keep the current New Zealand flag, the best thing you could do is serve up a bunch of lame options. And it almost it has. I mean, I don't know New Zealand politics from Adam, but it almost feels like maybe that's what happened. But there's a few things to talk about here. There's a lot going on.
I don't necessarily think it's a bunch of lame options, but the problem that I think with these three similar fern flags is that it makes it hard for anybody to feel like they're really backing one of them. Because it almost makes you doubt yourself when you look at them and you think, ooh, do I like it better with black in the corner or do I like it better with red in the corner? They should have just picked one flag with this fern design and the stars and then had two other different flags and make the choice clearer for people. Like I just think even people who would have liked one of these flags under other circumstances will find their like of the flag diminished by now second guessing themselves with color palettes or slightly different design elements.
Or Gray, is this not a sign maybe of mature decision making? I mean, if you were designing the Hello Internet logo, which you did, by the way, when you were designing the Hello Internet logo, I'm sure you thought of a few different things, and then you zeroed in on what you wanted as you got further and further down the process. And I'm sure towards the end, you probably had the big HI in the middle, and you were just faffing about with little minor changes to the border and slight changes of the shade of grey that you were thinking about, and should this move a bit to the left and a bit to the right. As you get closer to a decision, would it not be the case that all your options start looking more and more similar and you're just fine-tuning palettes and colours? And if they are getting close to their final flag, does it not make sense that you've got two the same but with slight colour differences?
I disagree because I think you're talking about the work of one designer working on one thing. So this is what you should expect the designers of each of these individual flags to be doing. Like I'm sure the guy who was designing the Kuru was homing in on that design and then figuring how far over do I want the spiral to be? How thick should the spiral be? That's very natural for that kind of work.
Right. So you think that process is over and done with? That the time for that is finished is what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that process is how you come up with the individual designs. But the whole thing with the committee is selection between designs. And so I feel like a fundamental part of that is to pick different designs, right? And to let people vote on them. And so that's why I don't agree that this is like a narrowing down situation.
Right.
And
you don't think the committee's saying, look, we actually think B and D is the best, the one with this palette switch from red and black, but we don't know which colour should be there. So we want you guys to decide on that. Oh, and by the way, here's a Koru and another fern.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is a result of the commission themselves having some split between these two color palette swaps. And this is almost the absolute perfect example of bike shedding, right? Where everybody likes to argue about the color of a thing. And it's like, oh God, guys, you couldn't have just made the decision and pick one of these. Like, this is your job as a committee. It feels like there's something weird going on with the decision making here. And then part of the scandal of what has happened in the past several weeks is that one of the women on the committee had to admit that she had a conflict of interest because she's on some government board which has the job of spreading the fern imagery across the great nation of New Zealand. Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well that's interesting. And then we get three of these designs. It's been an interesting process to watch. And do you want to mention the copyright thing?
Well, there is that too. I actually suspected this last time because last time when we were talking, you mentioned how you thought the versions of the fern that was being used didn't quite ring true for you. You thought they were a bit rounded and they lacked the nice edges of the one associated with the All Blacks rugby team.
Right, the best looking one.
The best looking one. And it has turned out that nice, slightly better looking one used by the Rugby Association was sort of struck out because of copyright. The rugby guys were saying, well, you're not using our fern. So they had to kind of slightly adapt it and make it look a bit different so they could get around this copyright issue, which goes some way to explaining why the ferns do look a bit different. I think the rugby people should have, been the bigger man here and let it go. I think New Zealand, you had one job. Your job was to have a black flag with a white fern on it. That's all you had to do. And the rugby people had to step aside and say, look, we're so awesome and our logo is so awesome that it now transcends just rugby and it's also going to be our flag. That actually probably has some benefit. No, it may have had some benefit to them. I understand what their concerns would have been, but I think they had to step aside or the government had to step in. But they had one job. They still had an option. That was the fern on the black flag. That didn't make the final. And they haven't done it. And I think they're a bunch of silly billies. I mean, one of the arguments that was going around is this whole, it looks like ISIS, especially, I guess, when it's not flying properly and draped. It might look like this Islamic State flag that a lot of people associate with the you-know-whos. And so people think it might look a bit nasty.
That's dumb. That's a dumb argument.
I think that's a dumb argument.
You don't make a decision about a flag for the indefinite future based on the particulars of politics today.
Yeah.
And the black is such a striking color on a flag. And unlike many other nations, like New Zealand has a legitimate claim to the color black. Like if you have that, you run with that.
Yeah.
The ISIS thing is just dumb.
Yeah.
That's just absolutely dumb.
Yeah. So, and was it the Prime Minister who weighed in and said there shouldn't be black on the flag? I can't remember who it was. I'm having a look now. It was, the Prime Minister, John Key, said he wasn't keen on a black background. Another interesting thing that's come up, I'm sure there are other things you want to talk about, Gray, is there's been this kind of late contender for a new flag to be thrown into the mix.
Yes.
This fifth option. I like this. It reminds me a bit of that Dan Brown book. What's the Dan Brown book that's set at the Vatican when they're voting on the Pope, and at the last minute they just have a wild card comes in the room and they elect him like by acclamation, and he wasn't even part of the original vote. I quite like that. Or it's even that happened in the West Wing as well when the Democrats were deciding who was going to replace Bart. Like they had like a last minute person come in who hadn't even gone through the primaries. I quite like the idea of that. Some last minute flag coming in and not being properly vetted and swooping in and becoming a contender. What do you think of that flag?
Yeah, I'm looking at this. So the thing that has happened is there's been a bit of an internet campaign for this flag called the Red Peak, and this reminds me of, you showed me that flag for Earth a while back on one of the podcasts where someone had done a mock-up of how does the flag for Earth look under various situations. How does it look in space? How does it look, on the side of a building or on the side of a ship? And someone has done that for this Red Peak flag. And while I was not really sold on that flag of Earth, I have looked at this Red Peak design and I have thought, sold. I am 100% sold on this. I think it looks good. I think it's a strong option. And this to me is exactly the kind of different sort of design that should have been in the Final Four. It's very different. For the listeners, the Red Peak is, if you imagine, there is a triangle upright in the center, like a pyramid from the base of the flag up to the top middle of the flag. That is white. There is a smaller red triangle within it. That is the Red Peak. And then the left-hand side, the space above the triangle, is black. And the right-hand side, the space above the triangle, is blue.
So I would say, like at first glance, you'd almost say it's like a red mountain with snow all over it, and the sky on one half is black and the sky on the other half is blue.
It's beautiful, Brady. That's pure poetry, what you're saying there. That's exactly
It says a
right.
lot to New Zealand, doesn't it? Mountains, it says snow, it's got the black, it's got the sea.
Yeah, it does. It does. And the design page runs through why they talk about it. And this to me just seems like something like this, or this flag should have been in the Final Four. Something different, something that is unrelated to traditional images in the way that we think of it. Like you have 4 options, pick one that is something modern, that is just something different. Even though I generally think that the colors red, white, and blue are way overused on flags, something about the ratios and the way this is done, it doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't faze me in the slightest that it's red, white, and blue. So I think this is a really, really strong design contender for a New Zealand flag.
My problem with the red peak is that it doesn't look like a national flag to me. It looks like a semaphore signaling flag, or it looks like something that you should be using to communicate to another ship to keep to the left or something. It doesn't say nation to me. It says, like, I've got a utility. I'm just a useful flag that's used in a car race to warn you that there's oil on the track ahead and things like that.
I can see where you would see that comparison, but I like it. I think it's a good design.
If Red Peak had made it into the shortlist against Koru, which would you have gone for?
That's a tough question. I might still go for Koru over Red Peak, but this, going back to my earlier complaint, would feel like if Koru won, it would be a legitimate win, and if Koru lost, I could have no complaint with Red Peak as the victor. That's my initial thought. So I'm looking at it right now. There's a petition on change.org that needs 50,000 supporters to I don't know, whatever they're trying to reach on change.org, but they're trying to hit 50,000 petitioners to get the Red Peak flag as an option for the 5th flag in the referendum. I think they have exactly a snowball's chance in hell of ever getting this on the referendum vote, no matter how many people sign the petition. But I am still going to tweet it right after the podcast because they have 24 hours to go and they are about 3,000 signatures short. So I would like to help them get to their goal if I possibly can, even though I don't think even if they make it, they're going to get onto the referendum. But they totally should be there.
If Koru wins, would you vote for that over the existing New Zealand flag?
I would vote for Koru over the existing New Zealand flag, without a doubt. Same with Red Peak.
Would you vote for either of the other 3 finalists if they make it through versus the existing New Zealand flag? Which, of course, is a moot point because you don't get to vote at all. But
yeah, of course, no. I don't get to vote at all. I mean, here's the thing. I just don't think New Zealand's flag is great at being a flag. Like it is not distinct. It's too confusing with Australia. It's too much in the past. So I would vote for pretty much anything over it. And if I'm ordering it, I would go, say Koru number 1, Red Peak number 2. I would do just the black and white silver fern as number 3. The black and blue silver fern with the Southern Cross next. And at the bottom of my list would be the Major League Baseball looking flag, which is the red, white, and blue silver fern with the stars.
The problem with the ones combining the stars, the fern, and sort of the bluey look of the old flag is it's the one thing they shouldn't do, and that is it's the one thing you fear a committee would do, and it's compromise and have a bit of everything.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And like we were saying, isn't this great? We're looking at this list. Isn't it great? They've been bold. They've got great designs. They've been really visionary. They've got all sorts of cool stuff. And then they sat down as a committee and they made the committee decision and made a big, bland, stupid compromise.
What's your order here, Brady? Because on my list, implicitly, the current New Zealand flag is at the bottom. So how would you arrange things, including the current New Zealand flag?
You know, this whole splitting the vote to keep the existing flag conspiracy theory has just about worked on me. I would almost hold off and say, let's give it another 10 years and come back when this stupid committee's all retired and let's get a decent committee to do it.
No, but you can't do that, Brady, because that is like the alternative vote thing that happened in the UK, where the whole campaign to split the vote was, well, if we change to alternative vote now, then we'll never change in the future. And that is not a valid argument. If you can make progress now, even if it's not all the progress you want, you should take it.
So you'd take a smiley face just to get rid of the existing flag?
I'm saying progress. I don't think a smiley face flag I would prefer over the current New Zealand flag.
To finish my thought, I said it's almost worked on me.
Oh, okay.
But I wouldn't take the Koru. I'm sorry. I think it's okay. I don't think it looks like a flag. I think it looks.
You don't have to like the flag that I like.
Yeah, so I won't take the koru. I would take the black and white fern because it's the closest to what they should be doing.
Right. Okay, so the black and white fern is your number one.
Yeah.
What would be number two?
The current New Zealand flag. Oh, are we including Red Peak?
Let's include Red Peak. I'm including Red Peak.
The current New Zealand flag is my number 2.
Number 2.
Red Peak is my number 3.
Number 3.
Black and blue fern.
Mm-hmm.
Koru. Red and blue fern.
Yeah, that red and blue fern is just awful.
Yeah.
It so looks like Major League Baseball to me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I cannot believe they didn't get the plain black flag with a silver fern on it. It's amazing to me. Amazing. The people didn't even get a say on it.
Yeah. I can understand why the people in charge of the All Blacks might want to fight the government about using the same flag. I can understand that, but it is just a real shame that that's the way things have gone down. Because you are totally right. It's like, I think you said the first time we'd ever discussed this, you said it was the most obvious choice in the world, and look where we are now. Good luck, New Zealand. Good luck.
Yeah. I
don't know when the vote happens. I assume it happens immediately after this podcast goes up.
I was just reading. It looks like it must be online or by mail because it goes for a long time. Choosing between the first referendum goes from 20 November to 11 December.
It's a long time.
And then the Super Bowl next year between the two is the 3rd to the 24th of March.
Oh, we'll follow up then with live commentary.
But for now, from me, from Gray, from the Reunion Swamp Hen, and from the Jamaican Rice Rat, have a pleasant evening. We are having technical difficulties. We are having technical difficulties. We are having technical difficulties. We are having difficulties of a technical nature. We are having technical difficulties. I am trying to reconnect. We are having technical difficulties.